and welcome to the Writing Instruction DVD series. My name is Tiffany Griffith, and I'm the Director of Writing for the University of Evansville. For this video, we're going to be discussing thesis statements. First of all, what is the thesis statement? A thesis is, in essence, a statement of the central point of the essay. The thesis presents your topic for the essay, but it's also more than that. It's more than just a statement of the topic. It presents the significance of the topic, your assertion about the topic, essentially what you think is interesting, important, or arguable about your topic. And arguability can help establish the significance of the topic. So, for starters, think about a topic. What are you going to write about? Maybe you want to write about birds. Well, birds is an enormous, vast topic. So in order to write a paper about that, you're going to need to narrow it down and focus a little bit. So maybe you've decided you want to write about vultures. Vultures is still pretty broad, so you have to ask yourself, what about vultures? What do I find interesting? What's unusual about vultures? Maybe you want to discuss whether or not vultures are really as gross and dirty as they seem, since they do eat dead things. So you might end up with a thesis statement that reads something like this. Because of their featherless black heads, vultures are much cleaner birds than one might expect for carrion eaters. So this thesis presents the argument for your paper. Now you may be asking yourself, all right, Professor Griffith, but what if I'm not writing an argumentative essay? This is a good question, but it's important to keep in mind, since you're presenting the information, this is still going to have sort of your bend to it. Even if you're writing a paper that's designed to provide information or to be informative, there's still going to be an element of argumentation in what you decide to focus on, how you focus your essay, the key points you're going to make, what information you're going to provide, how you're going to present and package that information and structure it when giving it to the reader. So let's go back to our vulture example. The purpose of your paper about vultures might well be to give information about the birds, but your argument, your focus, the assertion that you're making is they aren't really as dirty as people might think. So the assertion part of this thesis, vultures are much cleaner birds than one might expect for carrion eaters. And then you also, at the beginning of the sentence, provide the why, because of their featherless black heads, which provides additional focus for the essay. The thesis statement presents the central point of the essay. But, as we've established, and this is really important, your thesis shouldn't be too broad. The thesis needs to be appropriate not only to your purpose and what you're trying to accomplish and to the content of your essay, but your thesis also needs to be appropriate to the scope and length of your paper. For instance, if you're supposed to write an 8 to 10 page paper and the topic you really are interested in, you want desperately to write about, is World War II, you're going to have to narrow your focus. World War II is much too big a topic for so few pages. Entire volumes have been written on World War II, or just aspects of World War II alone, or various battles of the World War. So you're not going to be able to do justice to that particular topic in an 8 to 10 page paper. So make your life easier. That's the key reason that you want to narrow your focus and keep things from being too broad. You want to make your job easier to ensure that you can, as effectively as possible, address the point that you want to make. So let's think about World War II. What really interests you? What do you want to focus on when you're addressing the topic of World War II? Maybe you're really, really interested in dogfights and airplanes. So from there, you could be even more specific. And after thinking, you might narrow down your topic to something like this, so that you have a thesis statement that reads, the use of air support made a significant impact on the outcome of World War II. Here in this sample, you have a topic. Your broad topic is World War II. You've narrowed the topic down to the use of airplanes in World War II. And you have the assertion that air support made a difference in how the war turned out. So you've got your broader topic and the significance, or something that's potentially arguable about that topic that's going to provide the focus for your essay. So we've talked about what a thesis statement is and the fact that you need to narrow it and why, because it's going to simplify your life tremendously if you narrow your topic down and focus your thesis. So you might be wondering how you go about creating and generating this thesis statement. One really good way to start on a thesis, especially if you're stuck, is think about a question. Is there a question you really want to know the answer to, and a question that you really want to explore throughout the course of a paper and provide the answer in that paper? So, for instance, maybe you're interested in dogs, maybe you've noticed a certain phenomenon, and you might have the question, how is it that dogs know that their owners are coming home, even when they can't see them? So, this is a start. We have a question that we want to find out the answer to. Your topic, largely, is dogs. Specifically, your topic is how they know their owners are coming home. So, take that question and rework it into a thesis sentence. Again, it's a thesis statement, not a question. Question's a good place to start, but you always want to frame your thesis as a sentence, a direct statement, rather than as a question. So, we would move from how is it that dogs know their owners are coming home to the statement, dogs seem to have some sort of precognitive ability that lets them know that their owners are coming home. Now, since you have your thesis, your task over the course of the paper is to support and develop your thesis with examples and data. Maybe you've seen this behavior firsthand and dogs getting really excited when their owners are coming home. Maybe you have an article or a study or multiple sources that discuss the phenomenon of dogs and some sort of precognitive ability they have that lets them know when their owners are coming home. So you have a thesis that you can develop over the course of your essay that will provide you focus. So we've established what a thesis statement is, and we've always established that the thesis shouldn't be too broad. But why shouldn't the thesis be too broad? Just to reiterate, because you want to make sure that the thesis is appropriate not only to the content, but also to the scope of your paper. You want to make your life as easy as possible. You don't want a topic that's so big that you can't deal with it in the number of pages that you're aiming for. So, in order to make your paper as effective as possible, you want it to be clear, both for you and for readers, and you want it to be focused. A clear thesis will help to keep you and your reader both focused on your central idea and those points that will support your central idea. In a way, a thesis statement is kind of like a contract in that it sets up the reader's expectations for what you're going to talk about in the paper. So, what are you going to talk about? Your central main point, the controlling idea, and its significance, the assertion that you're making. You're also going to need to make sure that you have information and assertions that will back up and support your central idea. So you want to make sure that you have examples, data, statistics, whatever sorts of evidence that you think are going to be most helpful in supporting and developing that thesis statement. As part of the thesis, in order to help give the reader a sense of how the essay will be structured, you might include what is sometimes called either an essay map or a plan sentence. And this is basically what it sounds like. It's a map, it's a plan, it's a blueprint of how your essay will be set up. So while the thesis statement presents the central controlling idea of the paper, the essay map lets the readers know the points that you're going to discuss in your paper in the order that they'll appear within the paper, so they have an even clearer expectation of how your essay is going to be structured, so they don't feel like it's sneaking up on them. So you want to have a main idea or argument and the points that you'll discuss in the essay in the order in which they'll appear. For example, if you have the thesis sentence, there were 3 primary causes of the American Civil War: states' rights, slavery, and economics. You have a topic. In general, the Civil War, which, as we've established, is way too big, so you've narrowed it down, and you're going to discuss the causes of the Civil War, specifically 3 of them. So you have more than a mere statement of fact. You have the potential for argument, and the significance of this essay lies in the potential for that argument. What's arguable about this statement? Well, someone might disagree with the things that you've chosen as the 3 primary causes for the war. Other people might offer different causes or additional causes. Someone might argue that there were more than 3. So you have potential for debate with this thesis. We also have an idea of how this essay is going to be structured. We know you're going to be talking about the 3 causes, but we also know that the order that the paragraphs are going to be set up in the paper. First, the author is going to discuss states' rights. Next, they're going to discuss slavery. And finally, the essay will discuss economics. So again, the reader has expectations for how the essay will unfold. And as an author, you know where you're going, the order that you're going to present your points in. So this helps give you a sense of how you're going to prepare for and present this paper. So we've talked about what a thesis statement is. We've talked about narrowing the focus of the thesis statement so that it's not too big to deal with. So here are a few other tips to help you put together a thesis statement and think about what not to do and then what to do. First of all, You want to avoid simply announcing what your paper would do. In the real world, we don't always announce our intentions. If we're sitting down to dinner, we don't typically look at our family and say, I am going to ingest this food because it is nutritious and will make me healthy and strong. It would just feel sort of awkward and strange. Similarly, you don't want to take this approach when you're constructing a thesis statement. So, avoid formal announcements about what your paper will do. For instance, try to avoid the following example. I am going to discuss QQ Whipfunk's article, Cookie Monster, Addict or Gourmand. You'll notice there's no real point made about the article. There's no assertion about the topic. It simply announces what the paper will discuss. So there's really nowhere you can go with this. You also, for a similar reason, want to avoid simple statements of fact. If your thesis is something like soap operas come on during the day, I wake up every morning at 6:30. Food goes in here. There's really no information that you can supply to make this, one, interesting, or two, more developed. It's hard to argue the fact that soap operas come on during the day. So, it's far too simple, it isn't very interesting, and there's little room for argument and development. So let's look at another example of what not to do. QQ Whipfunk's article, Cookie Monster, Addict or Gourmand, is about the lovable Sesame Street character's conflicted relationship with baked goods. Again, this is a statement of fact. There's really not much else that you can say beyond that this is this article and this is what it's about. So, nowhere to go with the statement because it doesn't make a specific point. There's no arguable assertion. Finally, try to avoid generalized observations. For instance, QQ Whipfunk's article, Cookie Monster, Addict or Gourmand, is unconvincing. Now, this is a little bit better. You'll notice this observation does present an assertion that the article is unconvincing, but it's far too general, it's far too broad, and this same observation could apply to numerous articles. Lots of articles out there could be unconvincing. So you want to try to find something that works a little bit better and make this more specific. A specific thesis presents the writer's point and again might indicate the organization and structure of the paper by presenting the points that the author will make in the order in which they will appear throughout the essay. This indication of your organization, either an essay map or plan sentence, might again be in the same sentence as the thesis statement, or you might present it in one or more separate sentences. Let's look at an example of a much more specific thesis statement that incorporates an essay map to give the reader a sense of how the essay will be organized. In his article, Cookie Monster, Addict or Gourmand, QQ Whipfunk is ultimately unconvincing because of his misunderstanding of the nature of addiction, his belittlement of the gourmand, and his lack of empathy for Cookie Monster himself. Now, this thesis essay map combo presents an assertion that the article is unconvincing, but it keeps from being too broad and too generalized because it gives concrete reasons why this is the case. We know why the article is unconvincing. Furthermore, it also gives the reader an idea of how this essay is going to be structured. We know the points that the author is going to address in the order that he will address them to support the thesis. 1, Whipfunk's misunderstanding of addiction. 2, his belittlement of the gourmand. And 3, his lack of empathy for Cookie Monster. These 3 things are going to support the reasons that this article is unconvincing. A last major consideration for your thesis statement is where to place it within your essay. Now, while some essays are organized inductively, which means that the thesis falls closer to the end of the paper, you want to think about what your audience's expectations are going to be. We tend to expect a thesis statement to be found closer to the beginning of the paper. Particularly in most of the essays you're going to be writing in college, there's a very good chance that this is where your audience and your instructors are going to be expecting your thesis to appear. Now, I don't mean that you should make the thesis statement the very first sentence of the introductory paragraph. You want to build up to your thesis statement. You want to give the readers a little bit of context, kind of let them warm up to the idea of the general topic before you present your controlling idea. A few general tips to think about when you're putting together your thesis statement. Feel free to start with a working thesis. And when you're working on your draft, you might start with a question and then rephrase this question in the form of a statement, and then you'll have a thesis statement to work with. Now, keep in mind that as you work on your draft, and particularly if you're doing research, you might find that your thesis statement changes, whether subtly or drastically. That's perfectly acceptable. Just be prepared to work with that. And keep in mind that the important thing is that you have a clear, specific, focused thesis for the final product of your essay. Again, keep in mind that the thesis statement and the introduction in general provide some context and set up the expectations for your essay, both in terms of the assertion you're going to make and the points that you're going to address in order to support that assertion. An essay map or a planned sentence might be helpful in giving you and your reader both a sense of the organization and structure of the essay, where you're going and how you're going to get there. As part of the introduction, in order to draw the reader in, you might want to include some sort of relevant story, an anecdote. This can be a really effective way to begin the essay. You might also want to provide an example or an illustration of the point that you're going to be making. The key thing to remember is that you want those to be relevant and clearly connected to the central idea. Again, your thesis. So, to recap what we've covered, you want to have a clear central thesis statement, a central point for your essay. You want to make sure that you narrow your topic down so that you're not overburdening yourself. You don't want to try to cram too much into an essay and end up not doing your topic justice. Make your life easier and have a thesis that's focused and specific. Have an assertion or argument about your topic. This can provide the significance for your essay. Make sure that you give the reader an idea of how the essay is going to be organized. Again, what points are you going to make? In what order will they be discussed? Avoid direct statements of what the paper will do. Avoid simple statements of fact. Simple statements of fact can be very hard to develop and won't really give you any room to go with your paper. Avoid general observations. General observations are general and could apply to multiple topics. Make sure that you have support for your thesis, that you have assertions you can make, examples, data, statistics that you can provide to help develop and support that thesis. Finally, consider the placement of the thesis statement in your essay. In most cases, you're probably going to want to locate the thesis statement somewhere near the beginning, as readers are most often going to expect to find a thesis statement somewhere near the end of the introductory paragraph. Hopefully this information will be helpful to you as you go about writing essays in the future. If at any point you're feeling uncomfortable with the idea of the thesis statement, just want to see if what you're saying makes sense, we'll be more than happy to work with you on thesis statements and development of your ideas or any part of writing papers at the Writing Center.